a prison of endless possibility.
Watchers of the Plus, what is this? It's just another spin-off, smaller break-off show. Well, yeah, it is actually. Sam, it's me and you now playing this awesome little game of podcasting. What do you think about this? Episode 1?
My dastardly plan to get us to talk about all the Marvel shows has succeeded.
Damn. You tricked me. So we're not going to get pigeonholed. Let's just be up front with everybody who just decided to either arbitrarily or they're part of the super feed and they just found this and they're like, what is this? This is the last person I want to hear. Hold on. Wait a minute. We're not just recapping stuff. This is Watchers of the Plus. There's Max. There's Plus. What else is there, Sam? I mean,
a lot of people are jumping on the Plus train these days.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from, but
yeah, I think we got to warn everybody up front. We probably won't be doing too much Discovery Plus on this show, though.
Yeah, and I can't see the Paramount Plus in my future personally, but you know, look, there's a lot of pluses out there, and there's a lot of minuses too.
Yeah, that's a weird one, that Paramount Plus, because I keep trying to figure out there's like an episode. There's like a show or two that I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting to watch, but I'm just like, I'm not that psyched over that silly service just yet. We'll see if that one's any good. I think we're starting to max out on them, but I think there's just enough out there that we can kind of dip our toes and dip our hats into the dip our something into the water and see, talk about some of this stuff. Because I mean, especially this week, geez, we get a week off from WandaVision and we get just shotgunned with the new Justice League, and then our first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So kind of like there's a lot to talk about, and I think it's kind of an interesting time. I think especially like just the way these got released, I wonder if there was some gamesmanship there with Marvel and DC.
You better believe that this is nothing is coincidence at this point.
Yeah,
nothing.
I mean, it's interesting that it seemed like it took Marvel a long time to drop when these episodes were actually coming out. And so I think that was kind of on purpose. I think DC was trying to count the WandaVision episodes and go, I think this might be a week or two after they're done, and then we'll get the news cycle. And man, they got about 12 hours before people are logging on to Disney Plus to go get their next Marvel hit. So I love the competition between the two companies. It seems like what did Stan call them? The distinguished competition, So it's fun seeing. I mean, as much fun as you can watch two corporations battle it out over billions of dollars, but it's still fun to see that they're not afraid to take some shots at each other from time to time.
Well, and speaking of the Max tip, I was really hesitant about HBO Plus or HBO Max. Got to be careful of how you say it. But I started watching Doom Patrol, which I've never been really, a big fan of the comic or whatever. But I actually got fairly engrossed into it. Now, we're not talking about that today, but the foray into some of these, like there are some very interesting DC properties. I cannot say definitively that I'm in love with any particular DC property, but Doom Patrol is very interesting, and if it's kind of, it feels. Again, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's a good foray into HBO Max if you're interested. But why don't we start? We're going to cut right down to it. We're going to talk a little WandaVision. It's probably been talked about ad nauseum. We're just going to give our take on the season because now it's over, and now you don't have to go through hours and hours of here you can get 20 minutes of it. We'll do a little Snyder, and we'll do a little Falcon and Winter Soldier. I mean, I think those are our big three for this episode.
Yeah, and I think that it feels good to see that Marvel logo pop up on the screen again. After a year. I mean, it was July of 2019 or something when Spider-Man came out was the last thing we got, and so I mean, damn near a year and a half, almost 2 years between things, and it was kind of what a time to take it, because it's kind of gave just such a breather on such a mad dash to end game, and what a crazy finish that was.
Did it feel overhyped to you?
I couldn't have been more excited. I remember I was hosting an NFL draft party the night it came out, had to change my ticket, and after drinking beers at my dad's bar for a couple of hours watching the football draft, I then Ubered out to the movie theater, and then sat there and watched the whole 3 hours, didn't go to the bathroom or nothing. So I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time, trying to make sure nobody could see when I had a tear in my eye at certain parts, So I was full in on it. Like I couldn't have been more hyped for it myself, because it literally scratched every itch. Like I had a list, like I want to see Cap pick up Mjolnir, I want to see him go back in time and see Peggy. Like I was just like, it had certain things that I had like on my wish list that I was just like, I want to see Smart Hulk, and there's like all the things. This is great.
Well, it's interesting that you kind of started out with the whole Endgame tip, because really, WandaVision picks up literally 2 weeks, maybe a week or two after all that, and there's some interesting tidbits like of like how powerful Scarlet Witch actually is. And frankly, I mean, just beyond even all that, like the way it was filmed, like in a TV show within a TV show, and the meta of that, it reminded me very much of like Mr. Robot, where. And now I say that, and people are gonna be like, what do you mean by that? But I really think it's got this. It had a very unique look and style to it that I appreciated.
No, yeah, I think that WandaVision was very much a your mileage may vary on that show, because I mean, I grew up. I was a kid couch potato,
Sure.
So I watched
Munsters.
Yeah, I didn't watch the Munsters, but I saw Bewitched. I saw Dick Van Dyke. I saw, I watched Nick at Night with my parents when I was a kid. I loved Get Smart when I was a kid. That was one of my favorite ones. But and then you saw a lot of that 70s stuff. So like, I recognized the Brady Bunch references and all these things, and realized how deep these homages were that they really were putting in. And I was like, wow, they're really putting a lot of work in it. Some of my more casual kind of Marvel fan friends were kind of like, what is this show? I don't get it. And I was like, I kept repeating the line. I'm like, if you think this is a show about a witch and a android trying to fit into the neighborhood, you're not paying attention. Like and I think it was maybe the Biff Boys that mentioned that like the laugh track was a little bit off, that sometimes it sounded like a Normal's 50 laugh track, but like it was a little more ominous and would laugh at kind of weird spots sometimes. And that's like, there was a lot of little things that you had to notice were off, and I think the other thing is, hearing all these showrunners and kind of the intentions of the people that wrote the show, finding out that they were supposed to release the first 3 episodes on night 1 and then be weekly after that, but they had to delay because of the pandemic, and they weren't going to be able to finish the finale in time. I thought that was a really interesting tidbit, because I was like, oh, that would have made a lot more sense if you got the first 3 episodes and binged those to start, and then you went week to week after that, because I think that's why people were a little thrown off by that show.
Yeah. And can we just say, like right off the top, I mean, I think the unsung hero of the entire series is Catherine Hahn.
Oh, yes. No, I knew she was going to be great. I mean, I think that if there's something that Marvel does better than anybody else, it's picking out comedic actors to place in their universe and do things, whether it's little stuff like having Ken Jeong be the security guard in Endgame, or if it's something like Chris Pratt being the schlubby guy on Parks and Rec, and all of a sudden he's abs and an attitude and a tape deck, and you love Star-Lord all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa, what happened? They kind of are hit makers right now. Like they really, if they cast some unknown, you trust them. If they cast some big star, you're like, awesome. So it's kind of like, you just kind of have to, and I tell people all the time, in Feige, I trust. Like I've never seen somebody do what he's doing from kind of ground one. And you hear these showrunners, they're like, oh, he's basically the showrunner for every movie, every show. And it's like, man, What a job. What a world.
Well, I mean, I've liked her since I think I first really remember her in Step Brothers, which was phenomenal. And then Park and Rec, which is on was I should say on Hulu Plus. Now it's on Dumb Peacock, which is a whole nother ball of experience. But she was a great character in there, and she's just got this great presence. And I know everybody was a little bit miffed. I think it's at least it seemed like that for me, just like putting my head down and just kind of listening to the sky a little bit. It sounded like everybody wanted Mephisto, but like, let's just be honest. That whole Mephisto thing, like, do you really want the devil? I mean, do you really like? I never remember like growing up with comics like, ooh, I need to get that comic where they battle Mephisto. Like,
yeah, no, I totally agree. He was never somebody I was that. Now, when I heard the rumor that Al Pacino might be playing him, I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. Like, I'll watch Al Pacino yell at and be in the Marvel universe. But
no one remembers. No one remembers that Keanu movie that was horrible.
I actually, it was a guilty pleasure of mine. I grew up The Devil's Advocate.
Right.
I know what movie you're talking about.
Like it. You don't really like it.
When I the last time I went back and watched it, it was because it was on How Did This Get Made,
right.
And I had a good time listening to them talk about it. I think I went back and rewatched it. I'm like, why did I just like this movie? Because I saw someone's boobs in it. Like, what was up with this movie?
Yes, that is why. That's exactly why. They tricked you. They tricked you.
Yeah, but no,
Young Sam got tricked.
Yeah, as that went on, I didn't really expect. The only thing I was hoping for is when I was very let down by the aerospace engineer being just some lady.
Oh, absolutely! Of course, everyone wanted John Krasinski to come out.
Yeah. Well, my fan favorite now, everyone was going John Krasinski, and before I even throw his name out, I'm going to say that I know he's a geneticist, but I was hoping that old Hank McCoy was going to show up. Blue or not, then, because I'm a big X-Men guy, so I was like, maybe that's the curveball. And then a lot of people said Blue Marvel, and then it just ended up being kind of nobody. And there was part of me that was like, hey, I totally get if you want to plant some seeds to have something grow later or not, type of thing. But I think that you have to know at this point that there, especially with a week by week release, I mean, everybody's breaking down Mando, everybody's breaking down Game of Thrones, everybody's breaking down these things on YouTube. You have to know that people are going to tear over every line and
do you want a realistic take on this?
Yeah.
Here's the realistic. Okay. It was literally 8 episodes, 9 episodes, 8 episodes. It was 8. Let's call it 8 episodes. I'm not going to look at the internet. They were all less than 30 minutes, except for 2 of them. How are you going to pack that much story like that? I mean, if you can pick through Game of Thrones like someone dissects Ulysses, but with this you can get there, but you can't expect. You can dissect it as much as you want, but don't expect this to be as large as, say, okay, I'm going to just say it, like the Snyder Cut Justice League, where you have this expanded retelling of these characters to make the story somewhat salvageable. I mean,
yeah, no, and I think we have to also, you kind of talked about Endgame earlier, and I kind of realized this was my takeaway from WandaVision as a fan, was that,
okay,
hey, you know what, we got to take a step back and remember that Iron Man was just about Iron Man. And then at the end, there was a little shield mixed in. We figured out what strategic homeland, whatever, spelled out,
Yep.
And, same with, they'd show Thor's hammer at the very end of the movie. But it wasn't, wasn't till the middle movies that we started getting the little sprinkles. And it was just a mention. Stark upgraded the boosters on the jets in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, or, Captain America, Loki turns into Captain America for 2 seconds in the second Thor movie. It was just little sprinkles here and there. And we have to realize that not every episode is about introducing 7 new characters. Like, I think we got a little of that, like, just give it to me straight to my veins, where it's like, I want 800 heroes running across the screen like we did in Endgame. And we have to realize, like, yeah, that was really special when someone cameoed in one of these movies. Like, that's kind of the magic. And if you do it all the time, it loses a little bit of that. And so I think that's why we didn't get a Doctor Strange at the end, even though that's kind of what I was expecting in that post-credit situation.
Yeah,
He was going to
yeah.
be knocking on her door or something, but like I'm fine that he didn't. Like I think at the end of the day, it was like, hey, look, this was a show really about Wanda, and so we got a lot about her. I kind of wish we got a little bit more of her in reality than we did. Just
I don't
because.
think she's as interesting. I think now, okay, let me just say this. Before WandaVision, I didn't find her very interesting. Now, after seeing WandaVision, I'm much more involved in who she is moving forward than I was.
Mhm.
Um, and the same with Vision. I mean, you think about like I don't know, Civil War. There's Vision's very rarely used. I mean, he hurts Rhodey. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I can tell you about in that he does, his action in that movie. And
Yeah,
now,
them two
now,
together, it was very, very sparse. You could, it was just kind of one of those things that you could tell either stuff hit the cutting room floor or they just never were given. I think that's why this show was kind of made, is like, hey, let's take two characters who are interesting. It's a witch who loves a robot. Like it's at the end of the day, it's like you just pitch it that way and go,
yeah,
oh, okay, that's interesting. And so you take these two characters and go, let's give them some depth. And I think that's maybe kind of what I was missing from these characters. Because
yes.
I really enjoy some of these these progressions and everything. I mean, heck, I'm such a nerd. Like Jimmy Woo flips that card upside down, and I'm screaming, and my girlfriend's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "He figured out the trick. He learned the trick. He took him 5 years."
Now, what exactly was that from?
It was from Ant-Man, because Ant-Man kept doing the close-up magic, and
That's
Jimmy would be like,
okay.
how'd you do that? And there's even a scene in Ant-Man where you see him trying to do it, like somebody walks into his office and the cards go flying everywhere, and he's like, why don't you knock? So I think that's kind of where I think Marvel just does characters so well, because like, even not trying to jump ahead, but in Falcon, he's got a handler in it, and by the time that he does anything in the episode, I'm already kind of invested in that guy. I'm already kind of like, oh, look at, he's Sam Wilson's little Air Force buddy, and they work together and they're pals, and they have coffee afterward.
Yeah, it's amazing, and this is a good juxtapose to, I think, why I have not gotten really deep into the DC stuff, because I will go on record to say that I think that their side characters and enriching characters, they don't care about as much, or they don't know how to write for them. It's like, you look at, like, say, the Justice League. They present them as they're these 5 individuals. No one else really matters except for somehow Lois matters. It's like people matter only when the script tells them that they matter. Like, I'm never thinking about, well, how do these other characters get involved? Because it becomes real piecemeal and very patched in. But it's these niche characters, and like Wanda essentially was a niche character for the most part in the MCU, and now, she has some kind of. I mean, well, number one, let's just get real nerdy about it. I mean, she's like an Omega level mutant at this point. I mean, she's literally can control reality, which is freaking nuts. And now it's like, okay, well, she is somebody to contend with. Like, you thought Thor was badass. Well, actually, Scarlet Witch is kind of a little bit more. It's like but we didn't know that. The layman didn't know that until they actually saw this.
Well, and I think that just shows you, like, I always thought one of the greatest achievements that they decided to do with the whole MCU was take something like Iron Man, put it in today's it was at the time the post 9/11 world,
Yeah.
where everything's covered on the news and everything's scrutinized and everything, and show news clips of Bill Maher talking about him so it seems real, and kind of put it in the real world, make it as real world as you can. And so by the time that second Avengers movie came around, they're like, well, he's fast and she's weird. Like, she has telekinesis and telepathy, kind of. And now they've just leaned way into it, be like, no, you know what you didn't know? You're magic. And you've got this magic that can do all this crazy stuff, and you haven't been trained properly, so you're dangerous. And it just feels like this evolution where it's like, they're not afraid to do anything anymore. I feel like they they can do different universes, they can do time travel, they can do whatever, and it's just they seem to have just a trusted hand on the wheel. And like you said, that just, even just their backup characters, like everyone's mad that we didn't get more Darcy in the finale. And really, after 2 Thor movies, did you really care about Darcy? But then they put her in this and they go, oh no, it's 5 years later. She's a doctor. She's smarter than most of the people on this base, and she's going to let everybody know it. And she's probably going to crack the case, kind of thing. And you're like, oh, now I look at this character that I probably could have cared less if she ever came back. And probably a lot of people went, really? Kat Dennings is coming back? Okay, whatever. And now she's one of the favorite characters coming. Like, people are calling for a Darcy and Jimmy Woo, like, Agents of Atlas show now after that. And it just kind of shows you how it's like they can just keep spinning stuff out of these. There doesn't have to be a WandaVision season 2. They can have
they're well thought out.
Yeah, I mean, they can have 2 new shows spin off of it.
And this was the problem I even had with the Flash on CW. I was like, this isn't the Iris show; it's the Barry show. And I know that people want these characters to be more pivotal, but it's like, but wait a minute, like, it's not the Iris, it's the Flash. So you have to have a hierarchy and understand that if you want them to be front and center, you've got to make an entire show around them.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, you say that about Iris, but then in the Snyder cut, I know that you haven't been able to finish it. I was able to.
I watched enough of it to get it. I went all the way through. I saw the end credits. There are parts that I skimmed and hit fast forward through. I just had to.
Yeah, that's not the end of the world. So,
right.
I mean, the thing I looked at is, like, I thought Lois Lane is supposed to be this badass who doesn't need no man. She's going to get the story. And here she is, like, grieving over Superman and not leaving the house. And people are trying to get her outside. All she does is go and visit his memorial and give a cup of coffee to the cop that watches.
Very different from the Margot Kidder.
Yeah, so I just, like, that's kind of one of those things you say, like, their progression of these characters. Like, I couldn't have thought of a better Lois Lane actress than Amy Adams, and she was great in that first Superman movie. And then it feels like she's became a worse character every movie she's been in.
Well, I thought, to be honest with you, like, I remember when the whole Batman dream sequence came and you see the Flash coming through the Speed Force, and he's like, I'm here too soon or whatever. And, like, first of all, that the armor was interesting looking. I didn't understand it when I was looking at it at the time on the original cut, the theatrical cut. And they still, like, made sure to say that Lois is the key to all this in the dream sequence with the Joker. I'm just like, I don't understand why, because she got Superman back. I know kind of, I've read a lot about Snyder talking about what he had planned for his, like, 3-movie arc. And so I could clue you into that unless you want to wait around. I don't care. Go ahead. Shoot.
But basically he had planned on, so I guess the end of that movie is supposed to be not Apocalypse. That's the planet they're on. Dark Side. Sorry. I know. It's okay. I'm a little bit more of a Marvel guy, but I'm learning. But Darkseid had decided, well, the anti-life apparently there's a giant equation just carved into the earth, and so he needs to come here and kill everybody, and then
which was weird in the movie because I didn't understand why Steppenwolf saw it and, like, was like, well, there it is. That's the equation.
I think the mother boxes told him, I think, is what happened.
Okay.
But I don't think they had the equation. I think they just said it's here, kind of thing. So
and visually very interesting looking. And that was my biggest
much better. I was surprised. I had a friend complain about the CGI because I was kind of like, well, really? I thought it looked very good. I was very surprised, like, just in little things. I was like, why did they replace some of these shots of Bruce Wayne talking to Aquaman in the movie? Like, I don't understand why they even reshot some of this stuff. Like, I think
I'm not sure if that wasn't a reshoot or was it stuff that was cut away. Like, it was like a different take in a different, just a different part of the scene.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Like, they just wanted to make it look like it was different, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, look, when I started it up, I need to get this out of the way because if I don't say it, I'll hurt myself. when they said this hasn't been modified to, I don't know, the Zack Snyder's vision, and it pulls up 4:3. Now, I don't have necessarily a problem with 4:3, but I didn't understand that the plan was that this would be an IMAX, and IMAX is more suited to the 4:3 ratio. But it really threw me. It unduly, it cheapened it for me, because I was like, what is this, like a test print? Like, I didn't get it. I was like, why not just go ahead and fill the frame? But there are great arguments on both sides. It threw me. It made it feel cheap straight off the bat.
Yeah, see, I knew they were doing that, so I was ready for it. You texted me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I knew already." But especially because people kept mentioning that every time he shared a new trailer, it was in the 4:3 aspect.
Yeah,
They're like, "Wait, is he going to show the movie in this? Like, or is he?" Because everyone's like, "Is it just that he's a big Vero fan or whatever?" So, no. So I guess that he had planned that basically the end of Justice League, they haven't prevented that nightmare future yet, and what I guess at some point something's supposed to happen to Lois Lane, and she's supposed to die, and it leads to Superman giving up his humanity and submitting to Apocalypse to Darkseid.
What do you think about Batman just saying, "I'm gonna fucking kill you"? To the
I kind of liked it, just because I was like, it took you long enough. Like, as much as I would be the first one in line to complain about Batman being way too much of a murderer in Batman v Superman, like,
yeah,
there was parts of it that I like were a little bit brutal, which is funny because it's like I'm watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They're just blowing up planes and throwing people out of stuff, and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah,
so
Falcon and Winter Soldier had a lot of body count.
Yeah, which didn't bother me at all. But there's just something about the fact that there's something about the fact that I've heard people talk about this, that Kevin Feige knows how to find the DNA of a character. And I was kind of explaining it to my girlfriend like this. I was like, he takes Sam Wilson, and he's still from New Orleans, and he's still a great guy, and he still has wings. They just don't look like a bird's wings. And instead of having a little parakeet on his thing named Red Wing, they update it to a drone. Like, they know what to keep, and they know what to change, and they know what to just tinker with and everything. And like, one of them is you can't make a guy that doesn't kill anybody be a murderer, like, unless it's one of those things that's the central point of the movie, that he's crossed his line and maybe he's about to break and become a bad guy and yada yada yada. But when it's just like, oh, I'm going to take this thing that he's known for and we're just going to lose it, like, that's like that, you know what that is? That's 90s movie exec comic book movie thinking. Oh, we're going to buy this property, and then we're just going to put a guy in a trench coat and call him whatever. That's not what works.
They're willing to, or I should say, not so much they're willing to. I think that they've gotten very good at bending canon without breaking it. You know, the 90s comic it's basically, we're ripping page by page, and it's a one-to-one replication. In what we're seeing now is more of, okay, the pulp comic is a great foundation, but it doesn't, and it's a really good visual medium as well. What if we were to bend it into cinema and to evolve it into a bigger franchise? Obviously, they've opened up the storylines a little bit differently that have made it a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, and I do have to say this, because it feels like we've done a lot of Marvel praising and a little bit of DC dumping. Is that I think that this is an infinitely better version of Justice League. Like, if you love these characters, this is so much better. Like, there's depth to Aquaman. He's not just a broing it up. The Flash is a lot cooler. He actually knows how to use his powers and look kind of neat, and even pull off some tricks with them. You always tell me, but my big thing, if you got powers, I want to see you do something cool with them, and grabbing a hot dog out of the air and then being back at your job interview, feeding the dogs and acting like, oh, I didn't just go save that girl out there.
Yeah.
Smooth as silk. I loved it.
I will hand it to Zack Snyder every day of the week, which is, I think he can paint very, very well on film. However, Like, and again, this is going to sound like I'm bagging on it, but I'm really not. I'm just saying, look, 4 hours, it could be edited down a little bit because some of these scenes, while gorgeous, tend to stick a little too long. Like my leg jumped a few times. Usually when I see a cut that needs to happen, my leg will jump and say, "Hey, okay, cut. Let's go to the next scene, next thing, please." You know, it just there was a little bit too much expansion on some of the characters.
Mhm.
I almost wish that they had broken down these parts, and I think whether there's 6 parts, 7 parts, I don't know. I'm not going to look it up. I'm going to use my brain, but these it had been interesting even to make it a little bit more episodic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the plan at first, and then they ditched that. And I, I think it's right between kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place because, like, heck, they don't even talk about Superman until like halfway through the movie. It feels like. I mean, they kind of mention it once or twice.
Yeah,
like,
no.
He's barely.
They talk about him. You don't see him or the whole plan of resurrecting. Which I gotta admit, the resurrection stuff is way more impactful this time than it was in the other one. It didn't even make sense.
Well, yeah, and it's just like, and here's the thing too, is that like I look at some of their scenes that they didn't change and just go, you know what, Batman recruiting the Flash is missing is him finding out why he does it, like Tony Stark asking Peter Parker, why you doing this? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Trying to figure out what kind of guy he is, not just I need a team and I'm in. Okay, and it's just like, I think that's where they're still lacking with that kind of character development is again, come on, I want the world's greatest detective. That's been my biggest complaint about Snyder, is that he's supposed to be the greatest detective, and that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see Batman do. I want to see Sherlock Holmes that can beat you up, and I feel like that's kind of what I hope that maybe that's what the new Robert Pattinson's going to be. So.
I don't know. We'll see if that even gets off the ground. We'll see.
But at the end of the day, I do have to say, I think this is better. I think that every character is more interesting. I think that almost every scene that's changed is for the better. I think Steppenwolf, while he still has kind of goofy looking armor, like
but
it's very impractical looking, but at the same time, it's better than what we got before. The voice is more threatening. The lines are better for him. Even. What was the thing that changed that I noticed that I really liked was I don't know, just like I said, Batman's not a dumbass in this, so Cyborg actually has some interesting, you get to find out stuff about him. And then like the other thing I heard Zack Snyder say that he wanted to do the beard and the mullet like from the 90s, and the studio said no. And I think that's where really, like, you almost can't blame the filmmakers at this point. I feel like WB is too hands-on with these properties, and they still run it too much like an old school studio. And when really the formula is simple: put it in the hands of filmmakers that love the source material and want to do it justice. And if they just trusted people to do that, and look at Joker, you let somebody get a little bit interesting with it, and they're talking about it winning awards, and it's really like I haven't watched it again since I saw it the first time because it was too depressing. Like, and I will admit it was a very good movie. Joaquin Phoenix did amazing, but it's like, it's kind of funny that it's like you let somebody get out there and do something dark with it, and what do you know? It made a bunch of money, it got a bunch of acclaim. Why not do more of that and just see what happens? I think it's just partially they don't have that one guy at the top, because they can do good stuff. I mean, I've heard good stuff about Titans. You're saying Doom Patrol. Those are two things I've wanted to check out. And I know I've bugged you back and forth to watch Harley Quinn, and I will argue that that's one of the funniest things on TV, especially if you have watched like every Batman movie and every Batman the animated series.
And that's on HBO Max.
It references everything. I mean, the Bane from it looks like the Bane from the movie in the 90s, but he has the voice of the one from The Dark Knight Returns, so or Dark Knight Rises, excuse me. So it's it's definitely referencing and making fun of all kinds of stuff. And it's like, if you know the lore, and it's got a great cast. It's got, heck, it's got about 3 different Seinfeld actors in it. It's got, it's got really good comedians that do a bunch of voices in it. So, I'm not a DC hater. I want to see it done well. So I'm rooting for it, but I just feel like I so often get excited, and then I see Birds of Prey and I go, I liked the sandwich part.
Yeah, I won't.
I
can't
liked when they
watch
were.
that. Yeah,
It's like I liked when they were fighting, and she said, "I need a hair tie," and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." That was interesting, seeing like a girl problem when they're fighting, like something that's
Well,
somebody's hair
Tony
is like.
Sindelar told me about whatchamacallit, Suicide Squad, and he gave me a synopsis basically of it, a play by play, and I was like, I can't watch this because whatever you just told me sounds ridiculous and awful.
See, and that's another one that I would love to see David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad, because when I've heard what he said about it, like how different it is, I'm like, that sounds way more. At least it's interesting. That's
Yeah.
the thing. I think that the WB just saps the interesting out of it, trying to make it a wide appeal thing. And I think that you do yourself a disservice when you try and hit a home run on everyone. Sometimes you got to hit some doubles and triples and set yourself up for some minor successes before you have the end game. I think they tried to leap the line a little bit. They tried to go Batman v Superman, and then they threw a Wonder Woman movie out there in a Suicide Squad, and they're like, okay, we're going right into
They
Justice
need a
League.
strong head. I'm not saying that Feige is the end all be all. I think he's great.
And not that there isn't a couple of Marvel movies that if you never watched again, you'd be like, it's not like.
I mean, we all know, like Thor, Dark, whatever. I don't even know what it's called. Dark Elves. It's awful. I just.
But I mean, I think that
they.
Yeah, it's funny though, because I actually got my girlfriend to rewatch all of the Marvel movies during quarantine with me, which she apparently really loves me, so she did it.
Good.
But it's funny because like going back, you're like, God dang, they made this movie important at Endgame because he gets to go back and see his mom the day she dies. You feel that's one of the things is I know I've got an argument with people that go, oh, those superhero movies are stupid. They're all the same. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, you mean the first Thor movie where he loses the girl and his brother, or the second Thor movie where his brother dies and his mom dies, or the third one where his dad dies and then he has to kill his sister? I was like, which one of those are the same? And I was like, oh, and his homeland explodes and he's a nomad. I was like, that's the thing, is you have to progress these characters, and sometimes it's going to take you places where you didn't expect. But I think that that's what's interesting, is like, look at, kind of segueing into Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This first episode is, here's two characters I liked a lot, I knew a little bit about, and how much deeper are they after one episode of this? Like,
oh my gosh, let's just start it right up.
I mean, I don't know if we want to go through it beat by beat, but
well, Bucky's... I think when I think about Bucky, like I end up watching part of Winter Soldier, which Winter Soldier is one of my favorite of everything. It feels like
I think that's where I felt like that's where everything went. We're taking it up a notch here, and we went, this is what this can be. Oh my god!
Exactly. I mean, okay. First of all, you had Cap in a much more okay. Let me just go into Winter Soldier. Then why I think it sets a good tone. You had Cap, who, for the most part, who gives a shit about Cap? He almost is like in the canon, he's more of a goody. It's fists on the hips, looking towards the sky. And in Winter Soldier, he's a fighter, and he's fighting, in a stance, and in a way, like, again, having George St. Pierre in Winter Soldier and then seeing him in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm sold, because I want to know, wow, they're expanding this character, and I love George St. Pierre to begin with. And for those of you who don't know who he is, he's the guy that Cap fights kind of just, out on the deck, and it's very, very MMA. He's an MMA fighter.
Batroc the Leaper.
He's the one that basically, made the Superman punch a reality.
Yeah, no, he I remember he kind of goes toe to toe with Cap.
Yes,
and doesn't beat him, but impresses him, that's for sure. And,
which just going into Falcon Winter Soldier, I was like, wait a minute, where are we in the timeline? Because like I didn't realize that he was still alive. I mean, I didn't know. I knew Cap didn't kill him, but I was just like, oh, geez, here he is still.
Yeah, no, I remember. I think they eventually caught him at some point in Winter Soldier, but obviously things have been haywire with the blip. So who knows? He might have got blipped. He might have got he might have been freed by somebody. Well, I think that that's part of the mystery we're going to find out. I don't think that we've seen the last of him. And just that whole first scene, I was just blown away at how amazing it looked. I'm like, here's the Falcon flying around in the middle of the day. It doesn't look fake. It looked, like, I think that, like, there's even some of my favorite Marvel stuff. Like, if you go back and watch Civil War, there's the part where they have to duck under the tower that's falling down that Vision knocked over, and it looks a little dicey at the end when they're doing that. Oh, it looks like everything fell down and we snuck out under the bottom of it, kind of thing. I don't think that none of that was there in this. I thought it looked gorgeous. I thought that the action was great. I thought that it didn't look like a TV show for one bit. Like, I actually turned.
It really.
I was just like, this is like, I told somebody, like, this is the turning point. I'm like, these look so great. I was like, I want to thank Jon Favreau and The Mandalorian for showing what was possible, because they have shown that you can shoot movie quality CGI. And there's going to be an episode where they hang out in a bunker or something once in a while to pay for these. Not every
you gotta
episode
have the bottle episode, sure. The cave scene.
Whatever that is, But at the same time, it's like, and they know how to write for it, so you trust them. I mean, look at how interesting was Bucky sitting in a therapist's office, and he was hilarious.
And he's doing steps.
Yeah, I mean the making amends, and I was like, it's so great that he's making amends. I immediately, I think that a lot of people didn't realize early on in WandaVision it was a show about grief. And I latched on to really early that this was a show about holding on to the past, about loss, about PTSD. I feel like those are going to be a lot of themes that we see in this. And I think that that's where people that I don't like those hero movies are missing, is that these movies are about more, and that's what makes them good, is because
and the relationship, the triangle between Bucky, Steve, and I always want to say Anthony Mackie, but that is Sam.
Yeah,
is like that triangle. Like, the reason this is important is because Steve's gone. And Steve held that whole triangle together because, frankly, Bucky and Falcon weren't really friends. They were friends by association. And starting the whole episode out with probably one of the parts that will choke me out pretty hard every time is when Steve's old, and and he's like, this is your shield now. And it's
that got me.
Oh my gosh! Every time I watch Endgame, it breaks me down to my core.
It's funny because I watched Endgame when I was watching all these with my girlfriend. I purposely watched it ahead of time to be like, all right, can I make it through this movie without welling up at any point? And there's about 3 or 4 spots, like Ant-Man seeing his daughter for the first time gets me. Steve saying Peggy for the first time.
Absolutely.
Steve at the end, the whole funeral scene, and the I love you 3000 and I want cheeseburgers.
Yep.
Like,
cheeseburgers. I mean,
just stop
right there.
The whole thing. So I literally was like, well, I have to apologize to you for something. She goes, what's that? I think I made you watch 20 movies just so you'd understand why I cried throughout this movie.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, but that's the thing, is that, like, I couldn't imagine being that sad about something happening in a Justice League movie.
But see, and then
that's what's a bummer.
Yeah, there's a scene in Winter Soldier where Robert Redford is explaining to Buck, like, he said he knew who I was. And the look on Sebastian Stan's face is like the way in which he emotes, like, I know him and this hurts me and I don't know why. And then, immediately goes, reset him. And there, it's that like, I'm just so close to getting him. And it's like, I'm going to meet you to the end of the line. Good gosh. I mean, these characters have a lot of love between them, and that was broken. I mean, it was literally like kind of taken away from them, and now we're kind of picking up the pieces but at the same time, it's not a story of grief completely, because there's like this whole other thing, like this whole new flag breakers or whatever it is, flag smashers.
That's it, flag smashers.
And that's the bad that's coming out, and we already see somebody's kind of got superpowers. I mean, it's really interesting. It's like, but these guys aren't even talking. We don't even have them together yet.
And how about just what wrecked me in this was when I'm watching it and I paused it to write down Bucky's amends list because I was like, "Ooh, I want to go back," and I didn't get a chance to Google any of these names. None of them jumped off the page to me, except he did have H. Zemo on there. So obviously we know Baron Zemo is going to be in this
right.
Well, he's on his list, and so I thought that was interesting. And then so afterwards, when we meet his older Asian neighbor or friend or whatever.
Oh, geez, that was a heartbreaker. Was it
the
not?
whole time? Oh man, the whole time I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is maybe one of the maybe it was like a young kid from his neighborhood or something that's still alive. And then when you get to it and you realize he's on his list and that he killed the guy's son on a mission and he remembers it and dreams about it. And I was just like, oh, it wrecked me. And then just again, like the little character moments in this. Where does Bucky sleep? He sleeps on the floor. Yeah. Why? Because the bed's too soft. Why do we know that? Because that's what Captain America and Sam Wilson talked about the first time they were on screen.
Yep.
And it's just like that little stuff that connects that I'm just like, damn. I was like, I feel like I wish I could say, oh, I would love to go write this stuff. I'm like, I'm not that clever to think like, oh, of course he's in a bed sleeping and can't sleep. No, he's on the floor because he is the ultimate PTSD case. Like his entire life has been nothing but murder and mayhem. And ruthlessness,
consequences of murder.
Too.
Yeah, consequences. Yeah, it's foundational. You cannot. That I think that's my biggest beef with like Justice League and a lot of the DC stuff is there's no consequence. Like all the places are abandoned. There's no like life in the cities like where things are happening. The closest thing you get is that I think probably Batman versus Superman where you have like the 9/11 type scene. But even then, like you don't have these side players that matter. Like or people or they're you can say, oh, we're saving the world. Well, who else is in the world? Because all I see is like 10 people.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the thing about what Marvel does is everything has stakes. I mean, like, what did we learn in this? Both of them got pardons because they were on the run from the law at some point. So, and you have to assume pretty much, and I believe that probably Wanda got one too. And you have to imagine anybody that was on that battlefield probably got some sort of pardon. But even other, like, how about this?
They got a pardon, but they didn't get any money. They have.
That was my next thing I was going to go into was that I know a lot of people were like, what did Vision buy Wanda's house with? Like, because it said, property of Wanda Maximoff and the Vision. They were like, so he bought a house. Like, did Tony give him money? Did he take $5 and manipulate the stock market with it? Did he
crypto?
And then it's like, so it was so interesting when Sam and his sister are at the bank trying to get money, and the guy goes, "Hey, did Tony start pay you guys?" And he's like, "No, not really. It's just kind of a goodwill thing, and." And he's like, and that was the other thing is that we really got a good idea of how I thought that was interesting that this was supposed to come out first. And I totally understand why. Seeing the first episode, you're like, this is Marvel. I got my action. I've got my intrigue. People are talking about Captain America being on the moon. Let's go, So, I understand why this should have been first, but it's interesting that timeline wise, WandaVision happens first. And then this is like 6 months later, because he says specifically, I've been working with the Air Force for 6 months. So, that's if he just signed a contract the day after Endgame was like, I'm going to go be an Air Force guy. So this is somewhere between 6 months and a year since Endgame happened, which is interesting that they were going to have that big a gap for their first thing. I mean, granted, probably Spider-Man happens somewhere in between.
Yeah, think about that though, because if they had released the way they were going to, this comes out and then we go backward in time to WandaVision 2 weeks after the events of Endgame.
Yeah, so I actually kind of appreciate that this is how it came out, because I don't like going, oh, this happened before. Like that's one of the weird things that sometimes some of these movies do, where they're like, oh, the second Guardians movie happened 4 years ago, and you're like, oh, what? Like, it's like, okay, so that's probably one of the. But I mean, I feel like usually they stay pretty consistent with it. I mean, everybody has little holes they can poke in the MCU, but
Bucky's dream sequence threw me.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize he was. I thought that he was just going and killing some Hydra guy. It was
Yeah,
like I thought that's what he was doing, his
yeah.
list, you know. But then I realized like, and then especially when you realize that that kid is the same one that is Buddy, and it just was, oh, what a heartbreaker. And it's like, here's this guy that's was kind of a badass villain, and here you are feeling bad for him because you're like, well, he didn't mean to do it, but like just because you didn't mean to do it doesn't mean you don't feel terrible for it, you know.
Well, thematically, okay, so Sam really doesn't want to be Captain America. Okay, he is basically doing the reluctant hero.
Mhm.
As far as I can tell, anyway. Um, he even gives the shield to the Smithsonian. Now, at the end of all this, we have Wyatt Russell
Mhm.
playing John Walker, I think it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, and he has a shield. I don't know what if it's the shield or not, but he is being touted as the new Captain America.
Well, and if you notice, the guy that he gives the shield to at the ceremony is the same one introducing the new Captain America. And
Okay,
before,
good that you
and
saw that because
yeah,
I
before
didn't see it like that.
Rhodey and him go out for a walk, he comes up to him and he says something like, he's like, you did the right thing, you know, thank you for doing the right thing, or something like that. Like, kind of like, well, wait, if I'd have just kept it because he gave it to me and started being Captain America, that would have been the wrong thing, you know. It just,
So it is legitimately it is the shield.
yeah, I believe so, because
Okay.
yeah, that's just it kind of. And you know, I think that's another thing, is I knew that this was going to be a show that we were going to delve into race a little bit, and I really don't think it hit us over the head with anything. You know, it showed us, you know, these guys having, you know, this brother and sister having a hard time getting a loan, which is probably a thing that, I mean, that has been, I know that's been a, like, predatory lending or whatever, that's been a thing in the past. And so, you know, just, but, and then, you know, seeing him kind of get screwed over by this government, it's like, I helped say, and he's like, yeah, we always need people to help us against external threats, but we need a Captain America. And here's he going through, like, wait, I thought I was doing the right thing in giving you guys the shield and just being my own. I'm still going to be the Falcon. I'm still going to be a hero. But I just thought, you know, this belongs to where people can pay its respect to how good a person Steve was. And, you know, he thinks he's just doing the right thing. And here he is getting screwed over for doing that right thing. And so I thought it was really interesting that it's like, what, you know, why wouldn't you want the guy that handpicked by your predecessor? Like, I always thought that was very interesting when you see that happen sometimes in, like, sports teams where it's like a coach is leaving, they're like, oh, this guy should be the next head coach, and the owner goes, yeah, I want
Yeah.
this other guy, you know. And it's just kind of like, you
The
just
thing
had this
I
person
do
with
like is that
unprecedented success. Like, why wouldn't you listen to him one last time for a little piece of advice? Like,
yeah,
you
and
know,
it's that groundedness that I can kind of put my fingers into and bite my teeth into. It's like, okay, I understand this. I may not have lived it, but I get it.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things too, is that, like, the new Captain America is, if anything, a good man. You know, that's what Erskine told Steve the night before he got
Hmm.
his thing, is that don't be a perfect soldier, but a good man. And then right before Steve goes in back in time to give back the stones, he tells Sam, he's like, "You're a good man, Sam, but I got to do this myself." And it's like, that's that's the key to being Captain America, is it's not being the good soldier. It's not being the person who can be told what to do, because sometimes Captain America got to say, hey, we aren't doing the right thing right now. And sorry if that's what you don't want to hear, but that's what it is. And so I think that's one of the things, is that Steve recognizes, Sam, you're the guy for that job. You're the one that can be the symbol. And he just, you know, he didn't think he could live up to it. And again, like, I think he's just trying to do the right thing. He's thinking like, oh no, this shield belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
I've got, he's got a shield. Those wings do a great job. He's like, I don't need a shield. It's fine. I'll just be the Falcon. And he's not realizing that it's like, hey, they do, you know, I don't think people sometimes don't realize how much that leadership can be needed or avoid, or just sometimes when there is none, you know. But maybe we've seen an example where we've had some leadership voids in the last couple of years. I don't know if anybody can think of any great examples, but but you know, sometimes when there's not somebody there to take the reins, there's that power vacuum, and you know, bad things can rise to the top, or people can get toxic ideas. And people can, be manipulated a little bit but when you have that bright shining light, there's something there. There's something to be said for how important it is to have somebody that can get you through the tough times. And, that's kind of what it seems like that fictional country is missing right now. And he, I think that we'll see him, I think we'll see him don the shield before it's all over, but it'll be interesting.
I think that's got to happen. Wyatt Russell, I can't, I know him from a few things, like, and most notably for me is 22 Jump Street, where he plays the Zook, quarterback to freaking in that movie. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
His
I didn't know I didn't even
just,
realize that was him. That's
yeah. Well, and like, I have heard that this guy John Walker may not last the whole series. He doesn't have a great look in the Caps uniform, number one. I don't know. Like, I'm willing to go with it in that I think that this is kind of a misdirect.
Oh, I think it's interesting. We've seen so little of him. Like, really, any promo thing I've seen is just that little shot of him running on the football field and high fiving the band leader.
Yeah,
in the trailers, like him, and of course, like, that was the first thing I saw. As soon as he winked, I'm like, see, look at we need a good man to be Captain America, and here's this guy out here showboating, and it's like,
well, he's almost acting like Captain America did in the first Avenger. Before,
yeah,
like he was there really as PR. That was it.
And it made me think of that too when I realized, like, oh, one of the next scenes we'll see him in is whatever that football halftime show is where they introduce him to America or something. Like, oh, is he basically going to be a little barnstormer running around kind of thing? And I like that they altered the uniform. It kind of looks like his comic U.S. agent a little bit more than the Captain America thing, which is like perfect. It's like, you're not just, you're updating it, but then it's also staying a little true to the comics. It's kind of great. So, well, yeah, we'll see what he ends up being. Does he end up being kind of a false hero? Does he end up just being a guy that looks good in the uniform? What exactly does, I feel like there's a lot of different things a lot of different ways it can go. I know that part of me is hoping that we're going to go to, I know that just from stuff I've read, that we're going to go to Madripoor this year, which is a fictional place, but is a lot of X-Men stuff happens there. So I'm wondering if we aren't going to see some kind of super soldier stuff
in this.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of people are saying that's where one of the trailers shows Madripoor. So
they said John Krasinski was going to be Reed Richards, and I never saw that. And everybody was, Reed Richards coming. John Krasinski, wait till you see this. Wait till you see this. Ugh.
I'll be honest, I was waiting for it till the last episode. And that's when I kind of got over myself a little bit and just realized, hey, you know what? Sometimes they're going to mention a job and you just have to be like, ooh, what if it's this? Like, nobody thought, like, I never heard anybody thinking that Peter Parker was an Iron Man 2. And then all of a sudden that was a big fan theory. And they're just like, you know what? Yeah, that was him in it, the little kid. And I was like, oh, cool. That's neat. So I think that sometimes you have to realize, like, give them some time to come back and fill the gaps. It doesn't always have to be a kind of puzzle box to fill out. Like, I think that sometimes we jump to conclusions and we have to realize, like, that was just a line in there or something. They could have said a major in the army or something that will help me. And then all of a sudden it wouldn't have been all the uproar that it was. So I do wonder sometimes if those showrunners go, man, we should have let one of these YouTubers read the script before we put this out.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes that can be detrimental. But the one thing I did actually really appreciate on just a artistic and just design level, which was one thing that I've always, and I never thought I would love the Captain America series as much as I have, is the art style at the end of the show. Or at the end of the movie, the graphics, especially, I look at our cover art and I realized, oh crap, I see what you did. I basically used the end of Winter Soldier as kind of an idea for the whole thing, but the graphics that show the credit scenes at the end are just fantastic, and like, to not say anything about them is I just feel is a real. It just needs to be talked about. It's like they just do such a good job at some of these areas on the walls that rip. They're forming countries. I mean, it's like, Okay, you got me. We're going places. I see that now.
Oh no, yeah. Even just when the names were flashing over, there
Yes.
was like I don't know if it was Bible verses or something that were disappearing behind them as they did it. Like it was just very visually like interesting, and I immediately noticed the very similar themes to the other Captain America movies, specifically the Winter Soldier. That I was like, ooh, it's almost like they kind of remixed that end theme for
Yeah.
this. And I was kind of cracking up when I realized, like, okay, and this is the part where we will eventually get an end credit scene, but apparently we won't be getting it in any episode ones. So I was like,
Well,
dang
and
it.
and again, just things that you look for. It's like when they showed John Walker, and Wyatt, Russell on his credit scene. There's a strip of paint covering his eyes, which I found to be interesting. Is it a call out to something that we're going to see? I don't know, but it could be very telling.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I think this is a great start. I mean, honestly, I think that this all this did was get me ready. I was surprised how patient they were, that it was like, oh, that Bucky and Sam haven't even talked to each other by the end of episode one. They just really kind of took their time to set everything up. They gave us a glimpse of this. I've also heard some rumors that maybe we'll find out that these aren't the only Captain Americas that we've seen too. That maybe we will see. Who was there was a legend, kind of like the Tuskegee experiments, like they experimented on African American soldiers first, and was it like Isaiah Bradley or something like
Okay,
that?
now if you're talking about, like, I remember I had this comic and I probably still have it somewhere, but it was like Cap in a black suit and Bucky was a black guy, like dressed ridiculously, but it was like the new Captain America and Bucky.
Mhm.
But I think they were somehow evil in some way. I can't remember exactly how it all played, but
Well, I think it's one of those retcon things where it's like Captain America was the first Captain America, but and going back and writing things, it's like, oh, there was another person that they experimented on, and he was actually the first one. And but obviously they didn't have the serum quite right, so there was something wrong. I don't exactly. I'm talking out of my ass a little bit on this one, but I do know that there's. I know that there's one line from the trailers that always caught me. He's like, that shield has a complicated history, and so
yeah.
I wonder if there's something to that. Something along the lines of they threw somebody out in a war that it didn't quite work out as well for him as it did Steve. Although Steve still
Well,
got frozen
yeah,
for a
because
while.
I remember there was a Daredevil comic with Nuke, and it was part of kind of the resurrection of Matt Murdock, and of all the people that you would never think to be together would be Cap and Daredevil, but there was this guy Nuke, and he had a tattoo of a flag on his face.
Mhm.
I've heard that there is an analog to him in Jessica Jones, but I
Oh
don't.
yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Nuke actually. I don't even remember. They might actually call him Nuke at some point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he's just kind of a cop that has pills that uppers and downers and stuff to kind of make him
Okay.
strong. So
Not as
uh,
interesting as the character I'm thinking of, but like, yeah,
he
he
wasn't
does
he
the
wasn't
pills.
bad, but he wasn't the crazy maniac that was running around like gunning down cities and then taking pills and jumping in a helicopter. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It would be,
Uh,
again, now we're talking Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it would be interesting if you could juxtapose Sam as the new Captain America and then tap on Charlie Cox as Daredevil and have that nuke story. However, look, that is a pure something I'd like to see, and I don't necessarily think everyone else would want to see it.
Yeah, no, I actually I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with these Netflix properties, because I think that Daredevil they would love to integrate back in. I think that they would love to put some of these characters back in the rotation very soon. And I'm curious how many they're going to go with. Are they going to go with Charlie Cox? Are they going to bring a Vincent D'Onofrio back? Like, do they risk? Look at how much uproar Evan Peters coming over for a cameo was like, when it really was just intended to be like a little throwaway like joke of like, oh,
Yeah.
remember how sitcoms would recast actors? Well, that's what we did for Pietro, because just for the heck of it. And it ended up
Well,
being
people take this shit way too seriously,
yeah, no,
and they lose it, and it's
Yeah.
like, come on, guys, just
Well, the whole, I keep thinking everybody that wants to just say, oh, a portal opens up and Westchester's in Manhattan now, and there's a school and there's all these mutants and they just showed up. And I just go, no, that's
no
not
one
good. I
would
was like,
accept that.
well, just think about every interesting X-Men. Wolverine's supposed to be 150 years old. Apocalypse is thousands of years old. Uh, Stupid, even just Magneto's supposed to be a World War II veteran. So I feel like, while some of these stories are going to be updated, like, it's cool when there's some guy from ancient Egypt that's been trying to wipe out the weak for thousands of years and has 4 horsemen. And, I think that sometimes it's like, you have to leave some of it there. So I think that there's going to be some version of they've been around the whole time, I think. And, Wanda having powers since she was a kid is kind of the first step in that direction. Like, why would she be a witch unless she had some sort of ability from birth? And if she had abilities from birth, other people did too. So I feel like that when we talk about integrating all this stuff in, it's going to be done right. It's going to be done slowly, and that's why I think that maybe I've always looked for which one of these Marvel properties we're going to see our first mutant in. Just because that's where my nerd bona fides were in the '90s. That X-Men #1 with Jim Lee on the cover, that was my shit right there. That's when I was getting 6-7 books a month from my mom. That was my Christmas present every year. Was she renewed all my comic subscriptions, and they were all X titles. So couldn't be more excited about the whole Fox merger. Sorry everybody that got laid off. You were you're fighting the good fight. I hope you found a job now, but it's kind of one of those things where now I'm just looking around, and so this is where I've been kind of had circle on my calendar, is because we've got a new Captain America. Did we pump him full of anything? Are we doing any kind of super soldiery shit with him? Same with, like I said, we've heard about this pre-Captain America experiments. Are we going to see an older guy? I keep wondering, are we going to see old Cap at some point? Because nobody's actually come out and said he's dead, but they just keep saying he's gone. And so I'm wondering, is old Cap out there? Is he on a base on the moon talking to Nick Fury at in the sky with Monica Rambeau? So there's a lot of kind of interesting little threads out there. But the whole super soldier thing gets to me because that's where we get to my man Wolverine. And so, if we're we've seen that flag smasher guys kicking people and doing superhero landings and punching people in the face, and they're flying all over the place. That's what makes you go, oh, is there some version of that going on? Is there somebody pumping stuff in there? Are we going to get a Weapon X program? Are we going to get an Omega Red popping up out of somewhere with tentacles coming out of his arm? So I feel like that's the thing, is it's fun to pontificate on this stuff, but not expect it.
Now that's interesting, because if everything goes well, I guess we get Black Widow at the end of April, and I think Omega Red is part of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that he is. I know that the guy from Stranger Things is playing Red Guardian. Okay. But again, like I said, I always thought that these would be interesting ways to. I always thought it would be kind of neat to find out, like, oh, they're doing a super soldier thing, or they're spies. Well, it's like Weapon X were kind of spies when you had Maverick and Wolverine and Sabretooth and all those guys working for him. So I think that there's just a lot of ways to do it. I think that we're going to find out that mutants have been in the MCU all along, but this maybe either the government covered it up and was swooping up a bunch of them, and the ones that weren't getting swooped up were either getting recruited by Magneto or Professor X, and Professor X is going around Men in Black mind erasing people of any incidents they see or something. Like
they're making Antifa super soldiers now,
or who knows, maybe we get something very similar to what's going on in the comics now, where they're all friends and they're living on Krakoa having big group orgies and coming back to life because Professor X is keeping copies of everybody's minds in his cerebro, and when they die he just built them a new body or whatever.
Oh, Lord, I think I'm glad I'm not reading comics right now.
Yeah, no, they've totally changed it. So you don't know what's going on with the whole House of X, Powers of X thing?
No, we're going to stop right there.
Yeah, no. So, but yeah, we're getting too far away from.
We're
our wheelhouse.
Our wheelhouse is Plus and Max.
But that's the thing is, when I look at this, I always kind of wonder what version of the X-Men are they gonna introduce? Is it gonna be the original 5 facing off against Magneto, and we're just starting from the beginning, or is it gonna be they're out in Australia with a guy named Gateway that opens up portals and Longshot jumps through them with 3 fingers. Are we getting the 90s one? Are we getting the 2000s? Or are we getting this whole new thing where it's a whole different thing? So I think that's what's interesting or just exciting about this is we've kind of been leading up to, we're going to see Thanos. We're going to see the Infinity Gauntlet. How are they going to overcome it? And now that they've gotten that, it's kind of like a fresh start. There's no Galactus, end credit scene to be worried about yet. It's just, let's build up some new characters. We're going to spend some time with these people that were kind of side people, and now they're going to have their own adventures, and you're going to learn to love them the same way you love Tony and Cap and Thor and all the others. So.
But it took time, and the train leaves the station. We were adding cars on, so we're going to get there. Okay, now we are at like an hour 10. I don't know how long actually this is, but for sanity check, we're going to keep it right here for right now. We may expand deeper and go longer as episodes go on, but right now we want to just keep it, just right in that hour range, just to kind of keep everybody a little bit sane, and ourselves as well, because talking about 3 different things and bouncing around can be a little bit autistic at best. Sam?
Well, we'll do our best to try and kind of recap these Falcon and the Winter Soldiers and talk about what's going on, and then just also kind of what's going on in the news. If there's anything going, we hear any casting stuff or we hear anything. It's always interesting just following around. What Zack Snyder's saying these days, because
geez,
if you like one of the things is that I guess that if you just spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't watched Justice League yet, there's a Martian Manhunter cameo in it. He wanted it to be Jon Stewart, and WB said no. So I think that's just where kind of it's interesting finding out how the sausage is made with these, that sometimes it's not all about creative decisions. Sometimes your boss says no. And I think it's getting to talk about these, it gives you a better idea of how this stuff is created, and then just how we appreciate it so much when it's done well.
I think so too. And with that, folks, we're going to take off, but you're already at home anyway. Just go ahead, turn on one of the pluses or maxes, and find something to watch. I know for me right now, I've been watching The Way to Go. I'm a big Hulu Plus guy, but right now I'm watching Impractical Jokers on HBO Max. Fantastic, no commercials.
Well, I've watched the first episode of The Crown, and I'm a little embarrassed about the fact that I know much more about the MCU than I do any of these kings or queens or anything. When you're watching The Crown and Googling, is this the same guy as the King's Speech?
Yeah, fake history you're more interested in.
Somewhere along the line, your history teachers failed you. They did me dirty somewhere. I learned too much about the Crusades in middle school, I guess. I don't know.
we need to become Uatu's of reality instead of our fictitious reality, but at the same time, sometimes it's a little more fun.
Yeah, so let's log off. Let's go see what Uatu's been watching, and he'll let us know what we should check out next week.
It sounds good. Folks, we'll see you later.